Hello, welcome to episode 106 of the Online Strength Coach podcast. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the difference between realizing strength and building strength. So I think one of the most common misconceptions when it comes to strength training in particular, but it can also be applied to other forms of training such as fitness or speed, is there is a difference between building a capacity, building an ability, and displaying your ability or displaying your capacity that you've built. So a lot of programs that you'll see will both display capacity and build it at the same time. So common programs like this will be the West Side template and 531 and starting strength as well. They're probably the three of the most common or most popular types of programs that build capacity. They do get you stronger, but they also display your capacity week in, week out. Now, a sort of program that will build your capacity whilst not displaying your capacity will be something like a Boris-Shigo routine and something like a Russian squat routine with a really light max, or even something like something like Smolov Jr. with a light max. These will be like high volume programs. Something like Shigo's routine will also involve high frequency, as the other programs do, whereas Shigo will also employ will also employ variation, whereas the squat routine and Smolov do not employ variation at all. They are just like single lift programs. All of these programs develop strength. All of them will get you stronger if applied correctly. Some of the programs, such as Shigo, Smolov, or Russian squat routine, if not applied with the due care and diligence, is not going too heavy all the time, or not putting in a max that you haven't achieved, or putting in a max that is actually your max, these programs will chew you up because the intensity and the volume will be too high at the same time. A program like 531, it utilizes very low volumes, but what it does utilize is something I like to refer to as intensity of effort. So taking a single set towards failure, if not to failure, close to failure, and constantly having the barometer of the previous week to beat, so you know if you've done the 75% weight or the 80% weight for 8 reps, then if you can get the next weight for this on a rep calculator, it kind of means this, or you can track your 1RMs, although they'll be reasonably spurious with the higher reps. You can track your weekly or sessional 1RMs based off your rep results, so you can see how your strength is tracking or your ability is tracking. Something like West Side, you're constantly aware of what your abilities are, although you'll be utilizing different bars, band tension, chains, repetition effort. You'll constantly be aware of what your capabilities are on the 3 main lifts. Now you'll have different PBs. I said PRs, probably hurt myself for doing that. You'll have different PBs for each scenario. So for an 18-inch box, 20-inch box, 16-inch box, camber bar, safety bar, etc., etc. But you're constantly pushing yourself to that level. But in the West Side template, it's much more specific to powerlifting because you'll do it in a 1 to 3 RM setting, which has a lot of the same recruitment patterns, a lot of the same coordination, a lot of the same firing rates, a lot of the same timing as you'll utilize in a maximum or limit lift, because you're doing maximal or limit lifts. Now, what I'm trying to describe here, I'm basically laying out the two kinds of program so you can see the difference. So one utilizes variation, volume, frequency to induce overload and adaptation, and the other kind of program uses a mix. So West Side will utilize a mixture of volume and intensity, although the volume will be reasonably low, the intensity will be markedly high, On 5-3-1, you'll utilize a high element fatigue, or what I like to term as intensity of effort on single set, where volume will be low, relative intensity will be moderate to high, but the intensity of effort will be high because you'll be doing a set to close to failure 4 times a week on one of the main exercises on the program. And something like starting strength utilizes a moderate training intensity. It utilizes a moderate to high volume, weekly volume, and it utilizes a lot of intensity of effort. It's egging you on, or it's trying to put you in an environment where you're constantly trying week to week to linearly increase or improve upon your strength. So we have here the building and displaying programs, and we have the solely the building programs. Now, when I say displaying your strength, I basically mean when we go into the gym and we take a competition lift or a competition variant, and we just basically see how much we can do. So we take a 70% weight and we try to do it for a rep out. So we try to maybe do a 20 squat set with it, or maybe we take a movement and we build up to 1 to 3 RM using chains, bands, or just the movement itself. We're constantly trying to set PBs week in, week out, utilizing variations or lesser intensities or higher reps or whatever the scenario of the program is. It's inducing overload in a linear fashion in some way. Now, it might be inducing it more in the mechanical factor. So when I say mechanical factor, more of a hypertrophy response. And this is fantastic for hypertrophy. It's something that you will do in any good program, as you will utilize like high repetition effort at some stage. But normally for powerlifting, it's done with general or non-specific competition exercises, although it will be done on specific muscle parts. For example, you might utilize a dumbbell incline bench press and maybe a machine chest press and a cable fly for high volume, and take it in the last set to failure like once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, to induce chest hypertrophy, which then you can utilize that greater cross-sectional area or that greater size to have a better force production capacity in your bench press. So it feeds into your bench press, or feeds into the sport in that manner. Now, where this kind of mechanical effort comes from, and then so that's the mechanical effort, cross-sectional area, hypertrophy. And then we have more of the neurological effects. So this is more of the direct strength training effects. So this will be done, again, you will get this from doing competition variants to failure. So if you do, like say 10 reps or failure between 1 to 10 reps, there's quite likely to be some kind of strength carryover. When we go past that, it becomes a bit more dubious. The benefit, or the 1 RM benefit we get out of it, specificity kind of flies out the window. But what we get from there is we enact size principles. So size principle will state that when we take a muscle to fatigue or to failure, it will recruit every muscle unit within the muscle to try and overcome the force, or try to produce the force required for the contraction, because all the higher threshold mover units are the mover units, type 2A, type 2X, type 2Bs, they'll all be fatigued from repetitive effort or repetitive contraction. So then we try to utilize the larger motor units and the small slow twitch motor units to try and generate the force that we can, and eventually we get to the point where all the motor units are recruited, the muscle or the fibers fatigued to the point where we can't overcome the force, and then we fail to lift. So through that kind of repetition, that kind of failure lifting, we can get 1 RM strength, we can get specific adaptation out of that training. And then we have something like the west side is probably the most typical, where we spend a lot of time in different bars, non-specific scenarios, producing in a squatting pattern, a deadlifting pattern, a bench pattern, producing maximal force. So we get better at things like rate coding, intermuscular coordination, intramuscular coordination, basically coordination with a heavy weight, and how to generate, or how to synchronize, or how to coordinate the effort to best utilize what you got. And eventually, with enough stimulus, this also leads to strength gain through, again, we can start to change fiber type, although it's a very long process. That's more like a 10, 20 year process. It doesn't happen overnight. And we hypertrophy preferentially the type 2, type 2A, type 2X fibers through lesser volumes. We create a more fast twitch environment in the muscle if you want. We don't hypertrophy so much the type 1 or the slow twitch fibers. We preferentially hypertrophy the fast twitch fibers, although this has limitations further down the road, as in we want to have a bit more of a mixed training. We don't want to just do the one or the other, so we don't want to utilize repetition effort or intensity of effort solely, because that will lead to stagnation, especially with advanced elite lifters, and also probably less so the west side method, because it's set up in such a way where variation's high through week to week, and maybe not necessarily, well, variation's high in the west side template, so stagnation becomes a bit less of an issue, although it has its own challenges when it comes to unequipped lifting. Because specificity, I think, is probably a bit more important in unequipped lifting. And west side is probably pretty bad at specificity, as in actually just practicing the actual competitive lifts themselves. So that's like and where the downfall of this kind of training is we're constantly asking for high muscular effort. We're always trying to push harder, do better than last week, and basically we end up stressing tissues probably beyond what we need to. So incidences of overuse injuries are much higher, much more likely. So muscle spasm, muscle cramping, joint related issues, tendinopathies. A lot of overuse injuries that are common to powerlifting have their root in this style of training. Now, when we look at a program, like we mentioned beforehand, such as an undercooked Russian squat routine, an undercooked Smolov, or a Borshiko routine applied with the correct max, what we have here is something that builds the capacity of the lifter. It doesn't display the capacity. So often, a lot of the times, if you do a Borshiko inspired routine, you'll not really have any idea where your strength lies. You won't have a great understanding of what your 1RM is, where your max is, how you're progressing. You might have a little bit of an inkling when you come and do 80 to 85% weights, but there's not a lot of times you'll do 90 to 95% weights or try a new max on this kind of program. So it becomes difficult to appreciate the progress you're having. I think that's where a lot of the lifters that I coach probably find themselves a lot of the time, is they're unsure of their strength, they're unsure of their progress. I think it's quite important for a novice or an intermediate to get exposed to probably more of the displaying kind of training. For the advanced to elite athlete, I think it's incredibly important to dip into the realization or the displaying of your strength as little as possible and try to focus more on the building of the capacity. Basically, we can build strength with both methods. One is less time consuming, being the displaying kind of workout. One is more time consuming, but also less energy totally, or less intensity reliant. So we come across a lot less issues. Overuse, like joint problems. Joints can be a bit more of an issue. Unlike Bashiko or a higher frequency, higher volume routine. But if it's appropriate and you build up to it appropriately, this is much less of an issue. If you utilize the strength building programs and don't display your strength so much, and you're more confident in your abilities and you're not constantly worrying about, am I getting stronger, am I not getting stronger, I think you'll have a lot more success if 80 to 90% of your training is more towards the strength building kind of program, so the boring volume, the boring sets and reps, trying to move the bar better, concentrating on the actual skill of the lift, becoming more efficient at the skill, utilizing specific variation to try and help target weak spots within the lift, rather than trying to rely solely on brute force and ignorance. Although you still have that in your arsenal, and then you can utilize your assistance work to also help overcome muscular imbalances. So if you have a weak back, weak triceps, whatever the point may be, we start utilizing the non-specific hypertrophy, or the specific muscle hypertrophy, but the non-specific movement hypertrophy that we were talking about beforehand, as in it won't fatigue your ability to bench press, but it's targeted at the triceps side or the chest, and it's designed to build muscle mass that we can better utilize in our specific training. And then we can utilize our specific training to get better at the movement, and also to build up our volume cyclically, and our relative density cyclically in an undulating manner. And that way we will build strength. We can build strength linearly for a lot longer, because our training is not linear. And anytime we take a step back, we take a regression, we fall back less in the program, because we're not constantly pushing and pushing and pushing. And our muscles are better, they're less toned state, they're less worked state, coordination is much better. Basically, we become better lifters with this kind of training. Hope that's not too confuddled, too confusing for people listening to this. Hope you've understood it. Hope you can take something away from it. I hope it's also something a bit different from maybe what you've heard before when it comes to talking about training. Any questions, comments you have, please leave them below. Please like and subscribe. Any inquiries you have, please shoot me an email, speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. You can catch me online at onlinestrengthcoach.com, where I publish my powerlifting related articles and only so. Or if you're more interested in my more philosophical bent, or more strength conditioning, or general articles, then check out castironstrength.com, which is my blog. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Mark. Catch you in the next episode of the Online Strength Coach Podcast. Goodbye.